Hey, I'm Lauren from TastyPC.tv, and so I've been taking a really quick look at the Corsair Obsidian 450D, which is Corsair's latest addition to their new Obsidian range. And basically they've got the 250D, which is a mini ITX case, the 350D, which is micro ATX, the 450D, which is like a mid-tower ATX, the 750D, which is a full tower ATX, and then the 900D, which is like gargantuan tower ATX. So this is just kind of like the final piece in their current series. And from what I can tell, it's kind of just like a modified 300R, but with like a obsidian kind of frame to it. But I have already done a full review of the 250D, the 350D, and the 900D, so for that reason I'm not going to be doing a full review of this case, but rather taking you for a quick tour around the case while it's empty. So let's get started. So then, starting at the front of the case, the first thing you notice is that rather than having like a solid front panel with a removable dust filter behind it, we've actually got a fan grille with like the dust filter attached to it. I do really like this because not only is it less restrictive for airflow than obviously the solid cover, but this will look really nice with LED fans. And also the brushed aluminium effect actually carries on down the grille, which is really cool and something that I actually haven't seen in person on a case before. I do really like, I think it looks really nice. But above that, we've got two 5.25-inch optical bays, and obviously the front I/O, the typical Obsidian on button, headphone, microphone jacks, restart button, and two USB 3 ports. And then if I take off this, and you can just see the attached dust filter. Now behind that, you've got space for either two 120 or two 140mm fans, and Corsair have provided you with two AF140Ls, and I'll cover Rad Options later on in the video. So then the top of the 450D is completely different to any other Corsair case that I've looked at, because we've got this like magnetic grille, which does a really good job of hiding the fan mounts, although you can't tell that under the bright studio lights. And it just kind of, you know, like peels off like so. And then below that, we've got space to mount either three 120 or two 140mm fans. And like I said before, I'll talk to you about Rads later on in the video, but we've got these kind of like rubber washers on the 120mm fan mounts to help stop vibrations. So at the back of the case, we've got a 120mm fan mount with a fan included, 3 holes for external water cooling, 7 PCI expansion slots, some ventilation, and a mount for a Kensington lock. So then looking at the bottom of the case, we've got this large magnetic dust filter which covers all of the grills across the bottom of the case, which is great. Although because it doesn't slide straight out, it means that you are going to have to kind of move your case to remove it, which will make maintenance slightly harder, but if I just remove that. Now below it you can see the 4 screws to remove the hard drive cage, and we've also got fan mounts for either two 120 or two 140mm fans. But I will obviously check different size power supplies to see kind of what size fans and rads you can fit here. But the bottom of the case also has these 4 rubber feet just to stop it from scratching your desk. So now on the side we've got this large windowed side panel, and both the side panels just remove with 2 thumb screws. So looking inside the 450D, we've got the two 5.25-inch optical bays, which use a toolless mounting system. Then here we've got the hard drive cage, which is completely removable using the 4 screws I showed you before, or you can put it in a different position if you want to. And that's got 3 bays, which can fit either 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch hard drives or solid-state drives. Now at the moment we've just got this gap here, which allows unobstructed airflow from the front fan onto your graphics cards, which is great. However, if you'd prefer, you can pick up another one of these like 3 bay hard drive cages and have it sat either like here or up here, although because it's only like this big, it means that you've either got like a gap here or a gap there, which does look a little bit weird. But the front I/O cables are completely black, which does look really nice, and then we've also got these little rubber bits for your power supply to sit on. Now when it comes to graphics card clearance, from here to the end of the case you've got a 430mm space to work with. However, if you're using a graphics card, it's going to come down into the bottom slot and like hit into this hard drive cage, or if you've got like a second hard drive cage here that it could hit into, then you've only got roughly 300mm of space to work with. For the clearance for your CPU cooler, you've got 165mm. But yeah, so I'm not actually going to put a build in this, but just kind of visualising a motherboard in it. I noticed the 24 pin is going to go like around here, and this like cable management hole's too high and that one's too low. So I just wish they'd kind of like more evenly distributed them down that bit of the case. So then the rear side panel is completely plain, and behind that we've got 2 plastic solid-state drive mounts, which just slide the solid-state drive in like so. And if you want to remove these to have more space for cable management, you can just undo the screws. But you've got roughly about 20mm of space between the rear side panel and the back of the motherboard tray for cable management, which, while that isn't like the greatest amount of space, as long as you don't have a mass amount of cables piled on top of each other, it should be plenty to work with. Although I would have liked it if they had put more of these like cable tie mounts around the place, just to make cable management easier, and maybe added more holes up here, or made that hole bigger just for like your fan cables and stuff. We do have a large hole though for fitting a CPU cooler backplate while the motherboard's already in the case, which does look big enough to not give you any problems with it being too small or slightly in the wrong place. And then lastly, I'm just going to really quickly cover some of this case's Rad options. So in the back you can fit 120mm Rad, which means you can fit something like a HATI or any other all-in-one liquid cooler which uses a 120mm Rad. In the roof you can fit either a 120, a 140, a 240, a 280 or a 360mm radiator. And I measured you've got roughly about 60mm of space between the top of the motherboard and the roof of the case, meaning that you can fit a 30mm thick Rad and a set of standard 25mm fans, but obviously then you will lose the top optical bay. So at the front of the case you can fit either a 120, a 140, or 240 or a 280mm Rad, and there really you've got space to go as thick as you wanted, so you could go for something like an Alpha Core Monster, which is roughly like 86mm thick in push-pull, and you'd be fine. Or then remember, the thicker you come out, the less length you've got for your graphics cards. Then with the floor, you do have the mounts for a 120, a 140, a 240 or a 280. However, given how far power supplies come out, I don't think it's actually physically possible to fit a 280 Rad, and Corsair haven't listed saying you can fit it. Now with a 240 Rad, with a power supply like the AX760i, which is 160mm long, that comes up to this line here, and that is before like the connectors or the cables. So if you've got a 240 Rad here, even if you've got the end tank up that end, it's going to come out like a little bit, which means that with an AX760i or anything longer, it's physically impossible to fit a 240 Rad in the bottom of this case. However, if you've got like a Rad where like that length where the cables come out of the top, then you'd still be able to fit a fan, obviously in the mount underneath the cables. But even if you do have a Rad in the bottom, so say you've got like a 240 Rad in the bottom, it means that you can't have a Rad in the front. So with this case, if you do want to water cool, what I'd recommend is just going for a thick Rad in the front, and then like a thick 240 or 280 in the front, and then just like a slim 360 in the roof. So that was just my really quick look around the Corsair Obsidian 450D. I'd love to know what you think of the case. If you're interested in my 250D, my 350D, or my 900D review, then I'll put the links to those in the description below. But if you like the video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already and you want to see more of my videos. And thanks for watching.